Hi, my name's Jonas, and I'd like to ask you a question. Are you a citizen or a subject? Let me start from the very top with the original concept of U.S. citizens. I'll start this story in 1776. A bunch of nobody hillbilly bumpkins with muskets decided to tell one of the most powerful authorities in the world that they didn't feel like paying that king's taxes or following that king's laws. Smart money said that this was a terrible idea. Even if they did get rid of King George and his well-funded professional army and terrifying navy, why wouldn't whatever general they found just take his army and appoint himself king? And even if he didn't, what would stop the stronger colonies from invading and conquering the smaller ones? And even if they didn't do that, who's to say that the government that they set up would be one that anybody would want to live under or that would endure at all? And even if it did, America needed a steady flow of merchant ships back and forth from Europe, and these were secured by the British Navy. How would these be secured without them? Well, you know the rest of the story. General Washington didn't make himself king. The colonies worked out the very constitution that we live under today, and not only did we fend off everyone else, but we now have the mightiest military the world has ever seen. How did that happen? Were all of those fears misplaced? Did things work out just because America or freedom is the best and the only way and works automatically no matter what? Well, to be sure, the Constitution made a very sharp break from how things were done in Europe. It recognizes no kings, no aristocracy, no noble titles or church. Back in the old world, people were subjects owned by the state. Under the Constitution, a government is owned by its citizens. Well, I suppose that the French decided that they wanted in on this too. They went nuts for the idea of revolution, and some people absolutely lost their heads over it. Literally. King Louis XVI was just the headliner in a long, long list of people to have their heads chopped off with a guillotine. But despite their initial passion for revolution, it just didn't stick. Almost immediately, they were under the rule of a dictator named Napoleon Bonaparte. And when he was gone, they crowned King Louis XVIII, brother of the very king they had just beheaded. So much for revolution. This wasn't just a French problem. The English had also given this a shot. Well over a century earlier, in 1649, the English Parliament executed King Charles I, declared the monarchy abolished, melted down all the royal symbols, and proclaimed the Commonwealth of England. They then came under the rule of a dictator named Oliver Cromwell, and when he was gone, they crowned King Charles II, son of the very king that they had just beheaded. Again, so much for revolution. So something worked out here in America that had not worked out elsewhere. And in 1830, a curious young Frenchman named Alexis de Tocqueville decided to go find out why. He hopped on a boat and went to see as much America as he could take in. He went to schools and shops and churches and jails. He met Sam Houston and dropped in on Andrew Jackson. And can we just appreciate that for a minute? America in 1830 was a place where people could just go visit the president. Anyway, he spent nearly a year hopping around the U.S. by boat and train and carriage, trying to understand why it was that this country works, what makes it tick. And by the time he got home, he had his answer. And he was pretty sure that all the monarchies of Europe ought to take notice and beware. For starters, he said, America was a country of individuals. He noticed that Americans were extremely self-reliant. When problems cropped up, Americans didn't just wait around for the proper authorities to come along and solve things. Instead, they worked together and solved things for themselves. In America, he said, there was no problem that couldn't be solved by individuals freely combining their efforts for the common good. That's the difference between subjects and citizens. Democracy only works if you have citizens to run it. And contrary to how politicians and the media frame it, citizenship is not simply something that the government grants to you. This is only true in a very shallow, literal sense. Sort of like saying that just having a kid makes you a parent, or signing a piece of paper, or saying some words makes you a husband or a wife. Marriage, parenthood, and citizenship are not things that you are given and possess passively. They are things that define who you are. They carry lifelong duties and demand loyalty, commitment, and sacrifice for the good of something beyond yourself. When those duties are neglected, the entire system falls apart. Alexis de Tocqueville wasn't used to seeing citizens. Where he was from, people were subjects of the crown. The difference is like renter and homeowner. A subject might have problems with their society, but a citizen owns those problems. A subject waits helplessly for government to fix problems and must accept however that fixing is done. A citizen takes the initiative and fixes things to their own satisfaction immediately. That's very different from the place that Alexis de Tocqueville knew at home. Of the typical European man, he said, the condition of his village, the policing of his roads, the fate of the churches and the presbyteries scarcely bothers him. He thinks that everything is outside his concern and belongs to a powerful stranger called government. If his own safety or that of his children is threatened, instead of trying to ward off the danger, he folds his arms and waits for the entire nation to come to his rescue. Sadly, it seems like maybe we've decided that we'd like to be that way. If I were to describe the typical American man today, he doesn't want to fix things for himself, nor does he wish to be involved in the fixing process at all. His idea of being engaged in a democracy is to write ignorable letters to a landlord called government without taking any actual ownership of the problem. Then he goes on social media and whiles away his days and nights in pointless, dead-ended fights with his fellow Americans about whatever controversy the media has summoned this time. Americans today expect almost every problem to be solved by one of the countless government agencies that exist at the federal, state, county, or municipal levels. It seems we can't even muster the civic engagement to actually supervise these institutions that we've created. Voters have consistently transferred powers from the hands of citizen volunteers to those of career politicians and appointed bureaucrats. In 1940, there were nearly 120,000 school districts in the United States. Each of those looked after a handful of schools, teachers, and students. Each had a board controlled by ordinary, volunteer parents who wanted a good education for their kids. Today, over 90% of those districts have been gobbled up. Instead of 120,000 little districts, we have about 12,000 gigantic ones. Imagine that. We've more than doubled our population, but have less than 1/10 the democratic oversight of our schools. Our schools! The place where we send our kids to learn to be citizens in a democracy. We forfeited democratic oversight of this. For our kids! Those people that, in theory, we love and care about more than anything else. That's how much civic duty Americans are mustering lately. Imagine if Alexis de Tocqueville popped by to visit America today. I think he'd see a lot of people folding their arms and expecting the government to solve their problems, acting surprised and bewildered each day that for the 18,250th day in a row, government has failed to solve their problems. If he came today, he'd see Americans sitting idly, isolated from one another. Even under the best of circumstances, about the closest thing most Americans have to a church or social club is Facebook or Twitter. When they want to know about the world or the issues that affect them, they rely on the word of media personalities that they've never met and never will. When it's time to sing or make music or tell stories, they put on Netflix or YouTube. When they need moral or spiritual guidance, they turn to the self-help section. And I guess you could claim that this is citizenship, because such Americans are born here, and they're raised here, and the passport says United States, and they vote. But they neglect nearly all of the civic duties that go with citizenship. They're citizens, but only in the same way that deadbeats are fathers. Smart money would say that we're doomed. All those rights guaranteed by the Constitution seem to get fainter and fainter by the year. Maybe you'd have to be some kind of an idiot to think that we have a chance. Maybe even the kind of monumental, America-sized idiot who'd ever think that a bunch of bumpkins with muskets could beat the English crown and build the most powerful nation in the world. So if we're going to be some stupid, somehow anyway, let's aspire to be that kind of stupid. I want you to take back your citizenship with all the duties and responsibilities that entails. And that means owning the problems around you. It's not enough to just pick a charity or two or make some donations. It's not enough to sit quietly in a meeting here and there. You must become actively, passionately engaged. And above all, don't act alone. Bring your friends and your family and your neighbors with you. If you'd like to reclaim the power of American citizenry and see real change for motorcyclists in the process, like the right to choose what gear you wear, or to fight unfair profiling by law enforcement, or to equal protection under the law from reckless drivers who kill us and get off with a $200 traffic ticket, please join us. Visit us at BikePAC.com. Get passionate about civic groups just like this one. By participating in the great experiment of Indian Creek, you are choosing to revive our democracy and build a better world, not just as a biker, but as an American. And I hope that even if you don't choose to spend your time volunteering here, that you find a way to reclaim this for yourself, to recover America's civic spirit with your friends, your family, and your neighbors and loved ones in your own way. Thank you.